Good morning, everybody. Matthew Spaniel here from Aarhus University. Great to have you with us today on this fantastic topic, the application of drones in maritime. I'll be the host of this webinar, and we'll have about 45 minutes scheduled to go through this topic. We've got a great lineup, but first a moment from our sponsors. The Periscope Network is an EU-financed project that's looking to accelerate trans-regional innovation in the North Sea region. We've got partners from all over the North Sea region, countries including the UK, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Netherlands, and Germany. The outline in the agenda for our talk today will be an introduction to the topic by Arjen Oudendal from the Netherlands Maritime Technology. We'll have David Kunkel from RIMS then presenting user cases, followed by Robert Rylander from RISE. Arjen and myself will then present some results from an initial survey that we've had on the use of drone in maritime applications. We'll then go to a discussion, a panel discussion that will allow everybody to participate then in the webinar, and then we'll look at future funding opportunities followed by international consortium building opportunities, and then we'll go into questions and answers from the audience. So without further ado, but before we get started, let me mention this, that we ask that you send over your questions in the chat function. So the chat function, you should see that available in the meantime. There is also an option where you can raise your hand. You should also see this option. And I'll do my best to get those questions answered, and also turn the videos in the speaking availability over to those who do raise their hand to speak, but probably more will be doing that towards the second half of the discussion. We are recording this again, so please make note of that. And we will probably not get to reach all the questions, and if we do not, then we will do our best to make the contact information of our speakers available to everybody who's participating today. So without further ado, I will then turn it over to Arjen from Netherlands Maritime Technology, who will give us a presentation on this very interesting topic.
Yes, as a short introduction to this topic, when we in our Periscope group were discussing what are the business opportunities for the future, quite often robotics and the use of drone in the maritime maritime sector was mentioned. And every week you read something or you learn something about use of robotics, of drones in the maritime industry, whether it is in the smart maintenance, or whether it is in production, or whether it is for operation. And so that was the idea there, to find out what is the market and what at the moment is hampering to get a big start, to make this a real mature market. So within the group now, we are thinking of bringing more people together who are interested in this topic, interested in the use of robotics and drones in the maritime industry, see whether we can create a small ecosystem of companies who are interested in a subject, and to see how can we accelerate. Is that by sharing knowledge? Is it by joining in workshops? Is that by going into projects? But a lot of people are interested to make this faster and this making a serious market for the future. A lot of companies are interested, and quite often we see that the companies who are interested, they're looking into their own environment in their own country, and maybe the solution is not in your own country, but in one of the other countries around the North Sea. And we see similar projects in the countries around the North Sea. So the objective is to share information and to see how can we accelerate in. So we want to learn projects, about initiatives, and we have two presentations on the subject. But you see great things in the news. Like last month, the Danish authorities are using a drone now for inspecting the ships to test the exhaust gases on the sulfur content. Last week, I learned from the Netherlands that the search and rescue teams will use drones to identify kite surfers who are in need of help. They will put up the drones and to see where they can find the people in the sea. Every time we see this, we learn this kind of examples. But now the question is, how can we grow fast so this will become a real good market for the maritime industry for the future? I have David Knuckle next to me, and he will give a presentation on one of the user cases, which is he started a couple of years ago, and we will also hear from him what is the present situation and what do we need to make big steps in the future with the use of drones. We will try to start the presentation now, see if that's working.
Thanks, Arjen, Matt, for the introduction. My name is David Knuckle. I've been at sea for 11 years and started to write maintenance schedules. And in 2015, the intention was to let's say raise the maintenance up to the next level. We started to scout and try to find a solution for inspection of enclosed spaces. And well, I tell you during this presentation a little bit about let's say the methodologies of how it's done in a traditional way. I'll explain a little bit of what we are doing and what the pros and the cons are. And I will also give you a little glance in the future regarding new hardware and software technology we're focusing on regarding drone inspections. Well, these are the traditional methods which are still used. We build a lot of scaffolding and we do the inspections. In some cases, we also do other work, of course, like thickness measurements. But as you can see, in many cases, the whole ship is built with scaffolding. Inspections with rafting on the top right, and also scaffolding in the holds. Well, for those who are managing ships, it's not new. Everyone is familiar with that, but it's still happening, and it's a very resource-intensive and expensive methodology, and not always safe as well. This is what we do now. We use drones for the inner inspections of holds, cargo holds, ballast tanks, but we also inspect oil rigs from the outside with the drones, which you can see on the left side. We also inspect windmill vessels like the pillars. We've been in a couple of pillars, which is very dangerous and difficult to access. But we do it in a very quick way, and I think we've done a pillar within let's say an hour, and then we have seen everything and recorded on the drone. So the pros of drone inspections is, of course, that the enclosed space entries is not required anymore. In many cases, we can just open up the manhole and we just put the drone in. Of course, we have to do some preparations not to get lost in the tank, but this is more covered by a working procedure. We're not working on heights anymore. We've done inspections of cargo holds of large ore tankers during surveys. Each cargo took us about an hour, and without, let's say, any scaffolding at all. And also, of course, the risk of building the scaffolding is not there anymore as well. Everyone underestimates that, but building scaffolding and removal of the scaffolding takes a certain risk as well. It's cheaper. This is a rough calculation. It takes a company approximately 21 days to build an entire vessel full with scaffolding. Costs 256K, and we can do it in 7 days with 2 pilots in 1 drone. This is including the tanks. Last time we did a bulk carrier and only the cargo holds, 9 cargo holds, and it took us about 10 hours to complete the entire inspection of the corrugation, the brackets, and the hatch cover beams during a intermediate survey. There are some disadvantages. That is because the technology is not there yet. We can't do any NDT measurements. There are drones which actually can do NDT measurements, but it's still on a perfect surface. So the surface needs to be prepared, and especially in tanks and on heights, this is still not possible. ATEX certification. There is one company claims that there is a drone ready and certified for Zone 2, but this is not the area where we want to fly. I mean, we want to fly in Zone 1 and even 0. So the old vessels which are in an enhanced survey program, in some cases they are excluded because the condition of the vessel is so bad that well, you know that there is additional work coming up anyway. So then it doesn't make sense to use the drone inside. For the outdoor flights, it's more regulated and you need additional licenses and therefore partnerships are required, because although you think drone licenses are universal, this is not the case, and it depends on country by country which license you need. But for example, for Holland, we work with a partner. In Singapore, we have a permission to fly in and out, obtaining the operator permit. Well, these are some references lists. We did some ballast tanks, jack-up vessels, 4.5 peaks of a tanker. We did some barges. We have the ballast tank of a discharging stone bulk carrier, and the holds of a large ore bulk carrier, which is inspected in 10 hours. We're the first company which has actually all the class approved approvals of the class. Bureau Veritas was the first, and then we went to DNVGL, ABS, RENA, KRS, Class NK, Lloyds, and IR Class. We are the only company at this stage which have all the class approvals, which makes us unique in the company, but it's definitely required in the maritime industry to become an approved service supplier, similar like a diving survey. We're not a surveyor in itself, so the surveyor will always join us, but we bring the eyes of the surveyor or the inspector to the particular place in the tank or the cargo hold. A little roadmap regarding the new hardware technology. We would like to have the drones autonomously, because now with the quality also depends on the quality of the pilot. They're hard to find and also hard to train. So and we would like to have a relation between the images and the position of the drone, which is now still in the head of the pilot. We would like to have sensor technology to carry out thickness measurements eventually, because that is one of the major we still need to cover. ATEX requirements, that also takes some time, because it is very difficult to get the drone ATEX certified. We need a solution for water and mud in the tank, and we would like to, let's say, find some additional tools to find the deformation of tanks. Sometimes they're hard to discover. I'm not saying impossible, but it would be nice if that could be done with 3D measurements and the thickness measurements, of course, which I already mentioned. Just to give you an example of the autonomous technology and how far the industry already is. In the left or on the right, you see the drone in the bottom. There is no pilot involved anymore. And on the top you see what the camera is seeing at that cage, and in, let's say, the colored area, the drone is finding its own path, so there is no pilot involved anymore. But in this case, you can also see that there is a relation between the position of the drone and the images and the movie that the drone is making. And the drone just continues flying until it's programmed to come back because the battery is finished, or until he has covered the entire space. Of course, the next step would also be that we go for new software technology, for example, data processing and image recognition. The software in itself already exists. We don't have to invent that anymore. The question is only, the challenge is only that we need to learn the software, what is right and wrong, and therefore you still need to have some skills to do that, and to program the software in such a way that the accuracy goes up very fast. But in general, the technology in itself already exists. Eventually, no one is going to watch 6 hours of movie anymore, especially not the surveyor, because he makes a judgment on site. But if ship owners want to have a look at it as well, then I mean, we're only interested in what is wrong and not in what is right. Well, just to wrap up, you can see the traditional methodologies are changing, and there is new technology already available, and the future developments never stop. And we're very interested in what your view will be in let's say, the next roadmap ahead. Thanks a lot. Okay, Matt, yeah, it's up to you again.
Thank you very much. Extremely interesting. That was fantastic, and it's really a glimpse to see, wow, how far we've already come with all these technologies. And looking forward to hearing from everybody else in the webinar later on about questions for David. But in the meantime, let's move it over to Robert. Robert, are you ready with your presentation? Robert from RISE in Sweden.
I think so. Good morning, everyone. Well, I have a little bit of a wider perspective. Thank you for a very detailed and very good presentation. I was nodding all the way, just agreeing. And by chance, I didn't know that, but you are also mentioned in my presentation. The drone's perspective to me is wide. It's like the traditional AUVs, ROVs also, but I'm not going to go too deep in those. But what's interesting is that these traditional drones are also put to the really to the edge nowadays. The price is still high, but the gains of using these ones are so high. This one is one that was sent underneath the ice shelf in the Arctic, and almost like a jeopardized mission. They hoped it would come back and surface in an ice-free area after its venture, and it did. So they dared to send it back in again, where no one had gone before. Maybe the military, of course, but they didn't collect the types of data that the researchers needed. So the price is going down. The sensors, the quality of the sensor is going rapidly up, and we will see traditional ROVs like this one for hull inspection will probably also become more familiar or on the market, and they will also come down in price, removing maybe the diver even more. We have seen it already in the oil and gas industry, where I was a nautical officer. We were using ROVs for much more work every day that remove the divers from the seabed. And what is interesting though is that in the oil and gas industry, it's actually reshaping how they design the templates. So the ROVs AUVs and etc. can go into the templates and do the job without the diver. So maybe there's a trend for the shipping industry as well, that we have to do this, the hull of the ship and the infrastructure around the ship available for drones in different kinds and shapes. Here's Rims. You've been on my radar for a while. I follow your progress, and I just say I take my hat off to you. Congratulations to you adding the classification societies one by one, and that's fantastic. And I think that's the future. But I think this is one of the key things that need to come in place. It's the classifications, it's the approval around this, and so we have it for drones, and it's even on this high level we have a permission now, an organized way to fly these drones. Maybe not as free as every drone operator wants, but at least we have a common work field for this in the European Union, and that is something we lack in the other drones, I think. And still, if we want to go autonomous and we want to go out of line of sight and we are not inside a ship, there are some challenges. Fly without line of sight still needs paperwork, and to do the real societal gains, we need to sort that one out. And this is an example where the Swedish Search and Rescue Society, they want to have drones posted in the small ports where they have a lot of pleasure crafts, and they want to be able to launch them remotely and fly them remotely out of line of sight, so they can get an eye on the site extremely fast, and then the rescue boat is steaming, or the water jet is steaming towards the incident site, and they know much more what's going on the water before they arrive there. Here's another project where we in RISE are involved. It's autonomous. It's the challenge to do this inspection autonomously on an airfield. It's about the runway, and it's about the fence, the perimeters. And yes, we do that manually. We fly them, etc., etc. But the challenge is autonomously, and it has to be all year, all weather, and that's also a challenge. So bigger things. This is a fantastic trend. I think this is also for me a drone, even if it's a cargo ship or something like that. It can be unmanned in the future, but for a time now we will see manned systems for a longer period. But maybe in a short while we will see downsize on manning. This might do some more sophisticated work. Dredging, etc., without personnel on board. We see some experimental harbor tug operations, etc., at the moment. This one is also a drone to me. It will be manned in the beginning. What's interesting here is also that they have the port interface will also be even higher automated, and we see some terminals already around the world that are automated or almost autonomous operated. So that's also drones for me. The vessel, the crane, the straddle carrier, etc., etc. It's also kinds of drone, and this is a whole ecosystem that is building up around the shipping industry. And in Gothenburg, there's a project where they want to have test even hinterland transportation with drones, with the containers loaded on a lorry, and the lorry goes kind of autonomously all the way into Borås, which is like a 100 kilometers ride almost, and to a terminal in Borås. So there's a lot of things going on. And even for the bigger drones, this is the interesting part. We have it for the flying drones, but in the maritime sector and the bigger drones, this is still experimental, but things are moving. This is from the IMO Maritime Safety Committee meeting 101, where Swedish Transportation Agency is only responsible for the scoping activity, but at least it's on the agenda. And you can see who are the forerunners in this. It's Finland, Japan, Norway, and South Korea. And so they're moving ahead. And I think we will see this moving much faster towards us than other parts of the maritime industry thinks. So the good thing about this is it's the same or very similar technology that are all used in the same here, but they have some different challenges, and especially for the maritime sector where it has to be all weather all year, and you can't really stop it. So I think the weather is also a very challenging thing that we need to sort out in the future, but we will do it. Even the ports, as I said, some terminals are already automated, but this is something we will see in a much more wider context. I think it's interesting. So there's a big ecosystem around this that comes into place, and it moves really fast. This was not on the agenda 5 years ago. It was not on the agenda maybe 3 years ago, but today it's pushed forward. And I think there's a lot of things we could do here to compete and increase the efficiency, especially if we're looking towards increasing the efficiency in Europe compared to, for example, China. So automation is something that we really need to do everywhere. And I'm going to stop there. So here's a short list of my references, and I will looking forward to the discussion a little bit later.
Excellent, Robert. Thank you so very much for that tour around autonomous and drones inside Maritime. It was absolutely fantastic. Wow, so much happening. Let me move to Arjen. Arjen, some slides or some insights that we're getting from Periscope are next up on the agenda, right? So what's going on here?
Well, telling about the subject is that with the group of people working in the Periscope, where we are identifying the opportunities, we say, okay, this is something we think about, but what is the market thinking? And so the Aarhus University issued a small survey, basically with only a few questions, which allow the maritime professionals to give their opinion in just a few minutes. And basically, the questions were, what is your opinion about the market for this particular product, and when do you think that this will happen? And we issued the survey, and also people were had the possibility to put comments. And this is what the comments we got from the people about this technology. We asked explicitly about the use of drones in enclosed spaces, and and if you see for market potential, you see, well, that like mentioned, the technology already exists, and there is an immense growth of the drone industry. So how can you make with the technology of today into the service of the future? And also, one of the disadvantages was at technology that said technology is available, but it is fragmented in the industry. It's scattered around. So is it possible, we think, then is it possible to make an acceleration by fighting against this fragmentation of knowledge and bring it all together? And also an issue is finance. And I will come back to the end, but finance is a bottleneck. How can you activate investors in this technology so that they really see it as a future business module? Because it's, the business module in the beginning is not so easy, and only when you start with scale up, then it gets more economical. Matt, do you also have this in here, the results of the 2 questions? Is this, huh? Yeah. It says about timing. people, it was between 2020 and 2025, it was the mean. And that means that the maritime professionals who are filling in the questionnaire, the survey, they really think it's something on the medium term. So it's there around the corner, not something which is science or future for 2030. It's really already in the beginning of the next decade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would add to that, but this one's particularly referencing the drone inspection of enclosed spaces.
Yeah.
Right. So each of these surveys are then taking a very focused view on a number of these different topics. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, I believe, will conclude the planned content side of this web seminar. And so now I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see what's going on in the dashboard and unmute everybody. And we also have the chat function. All right, the chat function is here, so you can see that that's where, if you do have questions and would like to type them in, you can go ahead and send them in there. So, but would like to open it up for discussion from the participants in the webinar. So if there's any questions out there, and I'm doing my best to keep an eye out to see if I can see hands being raised, because then I can unmute.
I think, Matt, when you are already looking for this, one thing what strikes me now already is that we most of the time we are focused on the technology and all the application, but I hear also things like license to operate, which is different in every country. The EU, which is busy with regulation, the IMO, which is busy with what Robert was sharing with regulation. That means that what everybody will have in common is everything about legislation. And so I think this is already a topic, I think, that if we could share this and if we could learn from each other, that would give a benefit. And because otherwise everybody needs to follow exactly what's going on in all these fields on legislation. So if we would find something that is easier accessible for everybody who's interested in it, somebody who's following it and giving leads, picking up the messages from the business and try to bring it back to the regulators, I think that would already the developments in this area, because that. What I can see, I was not aware what Robert was sharing about an IMO draft proposal, that was a notice in April issued. And there will be more things also within the EU. So that would be, I think, very useful if one way or the other, that would be easy accessible for everybody who's working with the drones.
I think that's really the nail that we had to hammer in. Because I think without clear guidance or regulations, it will be very hard to bring money into the market, because they are very skeptical, I think, to finance projects when they don't know the legal status or the jurisdiction around these kinds of operations.
Yeah,
it's too experimental at the moment for them, the money, so to say, I guess.
Yeah.
Not to us. Oh, we have a question, I think. Yeah, I guess flying your own drone within an ISPS area will be complicated if you're outside the hull.
I don't mind answering the questions if it's okay, because before you actually enter the premises of, let's say, a company or a ship, you've actually already go through some risk assessments. I mean, a lot of companies do want to see that you are well prepared, that you have made all the risk assessments, and that you have all the permissions to come on board, to come on the yard, and to do, let's say, all the safety management work that is required before you actually enter the premises. I think regarding the safety, I mean, it is in many countries it is allowed to fly around, but in many countries it's also heavily regulated. And if you're flying without any permission and they'll catch you, then you get the chance of a fine. So, but yes, I mean there is a certain risk. I mean everyone can fly a drone, and but everyone can also drive a car, and there is also a certain risk element in that. So, but as long as we keep responsible to and keep it regulated, and I think that is the way to go forward, then things go out fine. Does it answer the question?
Good morning. My name is Stefan. I'm from Arab. We're based in the Netherlands. With regards to regulation, we are specialized in the new EU legislation that's coming up, and we are working on a digital tool to ease the process of doing a risk assessment in accordance with the new legislation. So that's something that could be interesting for the participants in this webinar.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
I think it's good to make a split in the different regulations. You have regulations regarding, let's say, the permissions to fly, and that is the regulation. You most probably you have your tools as well.
Yeah, correct.
The class certification that RIMS has is more related to, let's say, a quality standard. So it's also regulated that that not every drone operator can just support the surveyor. You need to have a system in place, which obviously you have in place when you have the permission to fly. So, but then you also need to have the skills. And one of the class requirements is that you also need to know something about shipping. If the surveyor is asking you to fly to the builds and you're going upwards, then it's going to be a long flight. So, the class certification and regulation is more related to the quality of the inspection. And I think it's good to split the discussion in two and inform, let's say, all parties regarding both.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what we see as well. Because if you look at the new legislation, there's a lot of, it's really aviation focused and focused on drones. So we make exemptions as well for the Dutch government. And what we see now, for example, we're working on a what we call standard scenario for working offshore in the North Sea area, Amsterdam. There's the clear combination of aviation regulation in combination with requirements from operators from the rigs, so let's say Shell or BP, that kind of companies.
Okay. Stefan, what is the name of your company?
AirHub.
AirHub.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want some information, you can just send me an email, stefan@airhub.nl.
Yeah. Okay. Matt, maybe also for the time, because we're close to 45 minutes. Shall I go to the part of the funding?
That's right. So I think we are already over time by about a minute. Thank you for staying with us. But Arjen, yes, let's try to wrap this up.
Yeah, I have one more slide. We learned that from draft papers from the European Union that a new call is coming up. It's called ICT 09-2020, which is robotics in applied areas. And that is for robotics for infrastructure and maintenance, smart inspection and maintenance, especially also on infrastructure. And that call will come up, and it will be most likely firm in October. And I think it should be issued in January, I think, Judith. And that's and the European Commission, they recognize that with the robotics in application areas, you will face new technical and non-technical challenges. And the call is there to reduce the barriers that prevent a more widespread adoption of robotics. And our focus could be on inspection and maintenance of infrastructure. And it's not only about the technical part, it's also included. And you must have a demonstration of the techniques and of the drones, but also to raise awareness and make sure that it's better taken up by the citizens and the business. And that could also cover issues like legal and regulation, ethical, cybersecurity, business modules, connections to big data, and Internet of Things. And we were wondering whether it would be interesting to team up with a group of companies and see if that would be interesting to make a paper and to go for the call. The total budget is 7 to 9 million of this call. And it says it should engage the relevant industry stakeholders, including SMEs. And our plan is to definitely we will share the information we have with this group and also with the people who entered into the survey, and they have left their email address. And our intention is to organize a workshop first week of September in Rotterdam, and to invite companies, also invite ship owners and shipyards, and also from the business, from drones and robotics, and to have a workshop and to see what are the challenges we are facing, and would it be worthwhile to form a group and to see if we can make a project out of it, funded by the European Union, to see whether we can slash these barriers and to see whether we can have to stimulate a more widespread use of drones and robotics. So this is one what we will do as a follow-up.
That sounds viable, and looking forward to hearing from the rest of the group as we go forward through the summer. Before then, though, I would then like to wish everybody a good summer, and thank you for joining us today in this webinar. And we'd like to publish this webinar online, so please reach out to me if you've got any concerns before going forward with that. But again, thank you everybody for participating, especially to our speakers, David and Robert, and Arjen for your skillful annotation of what's going on in the sector. And on behalf of Aarhus University Periscope project, I wish everybody a wonderful day and good summer.
Matt, thanks.
Thank you very much. Have a good summer.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.